I think that today's work will be as successful as yesterday. My contribution would be an attempt to put an eye and spot on the role of the rural women in our regions. What does it mean to be a rural woman in any of our regions? Are there any similarities shared among women living in villages, in small settlements throughout our regions, everywhere? Believe it or not, looking at the surveys for the last 20 or 25 years and politics that European Union introduced in the European Union country members, there are a lot of similarities, whether you are living in a new member of European Union like Croatia or Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, or in any country of any enlargement, from Spain and Portugal to Baltic countries. There are a lot of similarities if you are a woman living in a village, living in a rural area. The similarities are shared, and if you compare the everyday life of a rural woman to her generation friend living in a big city or in more development part of the country or of the region, then you will see that if you are a rural woman, you are less employed in percentage. I didn't put any numbers here because I want to focus the presentation on visibility of the position of the rural woman more than to prove it with accurate numbers. They are easy to find on internet and anywhere when you Google the role and position of a rural woman in European regions or European Union. If I would be a rural woman, I would be less employed for about difference of 30% than the woman of the same age and very often same education but living in a city. I am less represented in whatever the political organizations would be mentioned, from what organizations are made after elections, local, regional or national or European. And if you look for a rural woman representing her group, whether she is or not member of any party, you will see that rural women are much more less represented than women living in cities or population as a whole. It means that rural women are less in the role of a local or regional decision maker than if you compare it with the national level or with population living in cities. Rural women are less paid. In some percentage, it is connected with the less opportunity for higher education. But even more and more, if you look at the surveys for the last 25 years, they are less paid, even if evenly educated, like a woman of her age living in a city. A rural woman has less property in her ownership. And that's how I actually started back in early 90s, looking at rural women in France, in Germany, in Spain, in Portugal, and seeing women working hard on their farms, whether they are in agriculture or in cattle, sheep, cows, whatever, producing. But they don't have it. They just work there as a wife or a member of a family. Rural woman has less freedom and chances for change. There are less opportunity offered to you if you are a woman living in a small settlement or village. So inevitably there is a less perspective for development of her own, for her personal life, and inevitably, of course, less contribution than possibly to the local community or the regional community. What are shared obstacles among women living in villages throughout our regions or throughout the European Union as a whole? If you are a woman living in a village, you have harder and less access to banks and loans because you don't have property. If you don't have property, then you have a longer list of obstacles to get some loan. You have tougher traditional family models. Very often, if you ask a woman living in a city in developed countries, in the first countries, first five in the European Union, and you ask the same question about her role in her small society, then you will obviously, you will not be in the need of surveys to see the differences of the sense of freedom of choices for a woman living in a city and women living in villages. There are more non-paid work. Almost every women with working career, whatever the career may be, have that problem of non-paid work because someone, somehow, sometimes in the long forgotten past, had an agreement without us women voting for that, that all the housework, all the economy of care, taking care of others, whether they are children or all the members of family, are job for a woman because she knows how to do that. And we do not complain. We want to take care of others, but it is very visible non-paid work because the same work is on the market and it can be measured how much money you have to pay for what any woman in the city, in the family, or in the villages are working for free. There is a shared struggle against domestic violence that is also shared among women in whole of the planet, not just European Union or our regions. Domestic violence was a kind of a taboo for quite a long period of time. It is still a kind of a parameter of a culture that you beat a woman. Why? Because you're stronger. Why? Because she knows why. So beat her and make her obey. And a lot of legislation had been made throughout all of our regions, but a lot of struggle still needed to really decrease the percentage of the women or children or all the elderly in the family being a victim of domestic violence, because no one is right to put another human being in a position of victim. There is a less opportunity for higher education. That's an obvious shared obstacle because the schools, the money resources are less, of course, because if she's in the village, she's in less developed region. If she's in less developed region, that there are smaller amount of money delivered in her family, in local community for education. Sometimes you get, through surveys, very clear answer that if there is a family with a boy and a girl, then the money for the schooling will go to the boy, not to the girl. In Vojvodina, for example, it's not that case. We like to invest in girls since the beginning of time. Less substance of social life. It may not be look like a key parameter of what's the quality of your life, but nevertheless, it is important to have a social life. We human beings, we are social beings. We need something to gather around, to have some kind of quality time in a quite different substance than routine, everyday routine, whether it is work or domestic housework or taking care of anyone else or in any way earning any money, but you need social life. If you're in a village, there is a less opportunity to have real social life. And more commute. If you are a woman living in a village, you need a train, a bus, a metro, bicycle, whatever, to get, I don't know, to the hospital with the specialties, or to go to school, or to go shopping, or whatever. And for a woman living in cities, it's just across the block. So what can I do if I'm a woman living in a village? And what a lot of women living in rural areas, I will share with you some experience from here in Vojvodina. So what can I do to change the position that I am on and in, and position that I don't like? I can address local and regional authorities, and we politicians who compete for winning some elections, we have to communicate with the people, and part of that population are rural women, and we are in obligation to pass the voice of their requests and their complaints about the position of their everyday life. They can address local community as a whole, not just authorities represented in provincial assemblies or local assemblies or councils or special departments, however the name is throughout the region. They can also address cross-border cooperation. That's something what I will share with you later, because there is a lot of similarity, for example, among women living in Banat, where you had the opportunity to see a lot of them yesterday, and women in Romania or part of Hungary or Croatia, and the cross-border cooperation is very warmly welcomed among rural women. They can share experience and teach and learn from each other. They can demand visibility. It is very rarely that a rural woman say, look, here I am, look at me. This is what I'm doing during the day. I'm part of this community. I want to be seen. I don't ask for money. I don't ask for you to find me a job. I don't want anything, but I just want you to see me, because there is a lot of invisible work that I do. There is a lot of invisible, untold stories about my life, and I want to be seen. Someone around the community has to have a task to make me visible to the society. And I can invest in future of children for better life in the same local or regional community, because that is also important for all of us, whether we are men or women. How can I do it if I'm a rural woman? Networking, that's what women know how to do, and that's a very successful model, not just for women and not just for social entrepreneurs, but networking is something what women quite easily learn and in a very efficient way they use. They can join women groups for some of their requests or plans or strategies for changing their role within their own local community. They, of course, can address parliamentarians from the national level to the lowest level of where you can find your representative. They can connect with business women associations. There are experiences throughout our regions and, of course, here in Vojvodina. And there can be activism as such as is, just to show through some proactive role that you are there and that you have seen what has happened with your role through the story of lives of your mother and grandmother and ancestor, and you have described it and you have a proposition how to change it for the sake of the boys and girls that we give life and birth in wherever we live. What would be strategies or tactics for rural women to change her role? First of all, we have to be very fully aware that changing of the role of rural women is a very long ride. I will give you, in a digression, a very small example how long ride is if a woman, whenever in society, put requests for a change, something in her role. It's less than 100 years that some women stepped out and said, I want to vote. Just 100 years. It's less than 300 years that men stepped out after the French bourgeois revolution with the famous declaration saying we have to be equal because we are human beings. But in French declaration there are no women. There was one of the great women of the time, Olivier de Gouges, that presented the request for a women after 70, 89 also have a right to vote. And she said, if I can step a guillotine, I can also step in the right to vote. She was guillotined, by the way. So it's a long ride because it took us 100 years, and still there are countries on this planet without women having right to vote. What was the explanation? All of them shameful. But at the time when the request was delivered, it was horrible for a lot of women who was active, who had strategy, had tactics, had plan, had explanation why women should vote. A lot of them arrested, some of them sentenced to death, etc. So it's a long ride. But we, generation of women living nowadays, I'm 55, I am the first generation of girls born on this planet that was meant to have rights. The first of all the generation of XX chromosomes. When I was born, there were legislatives that said she can vote, she can go to school, she can have money of her own, she can marry whoever she wants. If she wants, she can have a baby. If she doesn't want to have a baby, that's her choice. My generation is the first generation in human civilization with freedom of choice. It's a great responsibility. And I know that we are standing on the shoulders of the previous generation of women who fought for a day that a generation of women with freedom of choice will be born on this planet. So it's a long ride, and if you are aware it's a long ride, then you adjust your strategies and tactics. Change started quite recently on EU level. It's 25 years that rural women was seen, and there was strategies suggested and went through institution of European Union, and there are changes due to the fact that for that quite short period of timeline, for 25 years, there are positive changes. Strategies must be clear and fundamentally with the definition of rural women as unused potential for development. That's something what I strongly believe in. And that's something what the starting point for my activism in national parliament, where I'm serving the mandate of MP, but also here and in my local community. Women is a potential for development, unused potential. You tried it all with how to develop your local community, but quite rarely you say, let's ask women in our rural community, what's their suggestion, what they can see as a future of the village in next 5, 7, or 10 years. You will be amazed if you get a women of such a rural community and listen to them very carefully. Because a rural woman has to have a strategy that I'm not an object, but an actor, a player of development. And that's the crucial turning point in perspective in what is Weltanschauung, as Germans say, of my position as a woman living in small villages, but also a change of perspective of society looking at me finally. Because as any woman, as any human being, I can change everything that is changeable and do anything that is doable. That's a famous strategy. There is no box to think in, to be in. Everything is there for us to conquer. If anything can be changed, then there'll be some work to what's changeable really be changed. Has anyone done it? Yeah, a lot of women in our regions. You can look at the data for women in Portugal, for example, in Spain, in Germany. A lot of women changed because there was support of the broader community, of the level of European Union, of the level of regional authority. A lot of women are seen, and a lot of women change their status from being without any property to really be in the position to have loans, to have business idea, to be the part of small entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship or whatever. If you compare that period from, for example, 90 or 93 to 70 or 73, there is a tremendous change already happened in our region. Rural women made people listen to them. That's one of the major changes. So politicians had to listen to them, bankers, academics, civil sector, media, men and women who do not live in rural areas, legislators, lawyers, artists. There is a beautiful exhibition that went through Serbia that is consisted of photographs of women of rural areas in Vojvodina. That's something what was supported by Vojvodina Council and this assembly. And it was amazing looking at that photos and looking at the reactions of the people who came to exhibitions, just to see them in their everyday routine daily work in their villages. When rural women are seen and supported, the development is measurable. That is also, that can be checked compared to the measures that some regions, some European members and European Union as a whole already has been taken. So, who are my allies if I am a rural woman? Anyone who can hear and understand a very simple sentence. From the beginning of time, I was a rule taker in my local community. Now I want to be a rule maker as well, because that is good for everybody and because that is a source for common development in the future. That is the sentence that a lot of rural women that I offer very gladly sign. And that is something what gives me as a parliamentarian strength to share that sentence. No rural women in the future should be only a rule taker. All rural women should be rule makers, not for the benefit of her own, that's so feminine, but for the benefit of the community. And moreover, from my personal perspective, that is the one and only way to give the depth back, because I owe to all of the women who fought for my way of life, for me accidentally being born on the results of their struggle. That debt is to be given back to those who we will deliver in the future in this world, to our daughters and sons, for their higher quality of life. And that is less probable to happen if we do not remember this simple sentence. Thank you for your attention, and I do hope that we will have good discussion about what I shared with you as a more or less my picture, but picture that can be checked through data of role of the rural women in our regions. Thank you.